I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man, Your Honor.
Freedom is a precious gift, and it is nothing short of a miracle for those who have been wrongfully convicted and imprisoned. Here are the top 5 most emotional responses of innocent convicts as they tasted the sweetness of freedom after years of being locked up for crimes they did not commit. This person is Clifford Williams.
I just wanted to get out and be with my 6 kids. They was gone and it wasn't nobody but them.
At 34 years old, Clifford Williams' life was turned upside down. Accused of a murder he didn't commit alongside his nephew Nathan, they were sentenced to life imprisonment. There was no physical evidence tying them to the crime scene, only the identification of a single survivor. Despite 43 years behind bars, Williams never lost hope that the truth would come out one day, and it did. The DNA evidence finally revealed they were innocent, and the judge announced that Williams was a free man. At that moment, his life was forever changed.
Mr. Williams and Mr. Myers, the indictments have been dismissed against you. You are free to go, and we are adjourned.
For Williams, the news of his release was a miracle, an answer to his prayers. He had spent years behind bars, fighting for his freedom, hoping against hope that someday he would be exonerated. And now, at long last, that day has come.
They hear that they are free, they hug each other and their team.
At that moment, Clifford Williams was reborn, a man who had been given a second chance at life. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, and that he would face many challenges as he adjusted to life outside prison. But he was ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that he had the strength, courage, and resilience to overcome any obstacle that came his way. This person is Luis Vargas. Luis Vargas's life was turned upside down when he was wrongfully convicted of 3 sexual assaults he didn't commit, because all 3 assaults were committed similarly. For 16 long years, he was imprisoned for a crime he had nothing to do with. The weight of the injustice he endured for so long would crush most men, but not Vargas. He fought back with all his might, filing a lawsuit against the institutions responsible for his wrongful imprisonment. Vargas knew from the start that he was innocent and spent years trying to prove it. He argued that the police and prosecutors used questionable techniques to coerce the victims into identifying him as the perpetrator. And he was right. The DNA evidence eventually proved that the true culprit was the teardrop rapist, responsible for dozens of similar assaults. The judge announced the verdict. Hear it yourself.
He is in fact innocent because the evidence will show that it undermines the prosecution's case.
When the truth finally came out, Vargas was exonerated and the weight of the wrongful conviction was lifted from his shoulders. When he learned he was a free man, Vargas must have felt an intense mix of emotions: relief, joy, anger, and sadness all rolled into one. He had only one wish when he was released. Hear it from his mother.
Please buy me a big hamburger and we eat it together.
He fought back against the system and won, and he was compensated for the injustice he endured. The emotional scars may never fully heal, but Vargas can finally move on with his life, free from the shadow of wrongful imprisonment. This person is Clemente Aguirre. He was turned upside down when accused of a double murder he did not commit. Living near the crime scene, he was the prime suspect, despite having no prior criminal record. The evidence presented against him was flimsy at best. According to the report, Clemente went to the victim's house and asked for a beer but found their lifeless bodies instead. He tried to revive the woman but failed. However, Clemente's panic and shock led him to make a fateful mistake. He didn't call the police because he was an undocumented immigrant and feared deportation. Soon, Clemente was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to death. The news shook him, as he had always maintained his innocence. For years, Clemente languished in prison, waiting for a chance to clear his name. Then, finally, there was a breakthrough. Evidence of DNA misinterpretation surfaced, and Clemente's lawyers filed for more testing. In the retesting, the DNA traces matched Clemente's statements, proving he was telling the truth.
I do know that nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me.
Clemente could hardly believe it when he was declared a free man, but his struggles were far from over. Clemente had lost over a decade of his life, and his immigration status was still questioned. so he filed for compensation, hoping to build his life and start anew.
And I thank you for it, from the bottom of my heart.
The road ahead was still long for Clemente, but he was grateful for a second chance at life. This person is David Ranta. He spends 22 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. In 1990, Rabbi Chaskel Wurzburger was murdered during a botched robbery, and Mr. Ranta was incarcerated for the crime despite a lack of physical evidence linking him to it. His conviction was based on witness statements that were later recanted, and a New York Times investigation found that detectives had mishandled the case. Recently, prosecutors re-examined the case, and Mr. Ranta was released from prison. The judge said that the effect of this case was devastating.
It's clear that the effects of this case have been devastating, not only to Mr. Ranta and his family, but to Rabbi Wurzburger, his family, and his community. I don't want to lose sight of the effect this has had on all parties. Mr. Ranta, to say that I'm sorry for what you have endured would be an understatement and grossly inadequate, but I say it to you anyway. Based on the papers before this court and the record made here today, it's okay. The defendant's motion to vacate the judgment of conviction is granted.
Finally, after spending over 2 decades behind bars, Mr. Ranta was free. He expressed his joy and broke into tears.
I'm overwhelmed. It's interesting, and I would just like to say thank each and every one of you for supporting me today on this. As I said from the beginning, I have nothing to do with this case. If you're interested, there'll be as much paperwork as you like to read on this case and make your own decisions.
Without any physical evidence and with the discovery of detectives' malpractices, Mr. Ranta's conviction was overturned and he was declared a free man. He can now enjoy life outside prison walls and make up for the lost time with his family. He was asked if there was anything he wanted to do now, and his answer was legendary. Hear it yourself.
Yeah. Get the hell out of here, maybe. Thank you. Let's go.
Deborah Milke. Deborah Milke spent 22 years on death row for a crime she didn't commit.
My innocence did not matter in their pursuit of a conviction.
She was accused of murdering her son, who was found dead in the desert with 3 gunshot wounds. The case was based solely on the statement of Detective Armando Salde Jr., who claims that Milke had admitted to arranging the murder.
She then decided that it'd be best for Christopher Milke to die.
However, there was no record of her confession, and the detective was later found to have a history of violating human rights during interrogations and lying. After more than 20 years, questions were raised about Milke's conviction, and she was declared free when the court found no other evidence linking her to the crime.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son, Christopher, and I did not give a confession to Mr. Soldati.
Milke was emotional when she shared her thoughts as a mother who had lost her child and as a victim of an inefficient system. In an interview, she expressed her gratitude for being free and looking forward to reuniting with her family.
Losing a child to murder is a devastating tragedy. Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy. Try to imagine that. What happened to me could happen to any one of you.
Milke's case highlights the flaws of the justice system and how easily innocent people can be convicted based on faulty evidence. However, her release is a reminder that the fight for justice never ends and that the truth can prevail even after years of wrongful imprisonment. Milke's emotional reaction shows the immense toll her wrongful conviction has taken on her and her family. Still, it also reflects her resilience and strength in adversity. What do you think of these convicts set free and their emotional response? Comment below and subscribe for more.